I thought the most shocking moment of my marriage was when my husband forgot our anniversary because he was too busy shopping for luxury handbags with his mother. I was wrong. The most shocking moment was standing in my apartment doorway, watching my husband Anton and his mother Ludmila climb out of a brand new Mercedes SUV, a car I knew we absolutely could not afford, while she deliberately jangled the keys and Anton avoided my eyes, both of them arriving for what they'd announced would be a celebration dinner at my place. I had no idea that my husband had taken out a loan with monthly payments equal to his entire salary to buy his mother a luxury car, planning to live off my income for the next 3 years while I supported both of us. I had no idea that his mother had encouraged this arrangement, convinced that as his wife, it was my duty to financially support her son so he could fulfill his duty as her son by giving her the lifestyle she deserved. When I said, "You took out a 3-year loan with monthly payments that eat up your entire paycheck, hoping I'd feed you in my own apartment?" my husband just blinked, at a loss for words, while my mother-in-law clinked those keys on purpose, smiling like she'd won some victory. They'd come expecting celebration, expecting me to congratulate them on this purchase, expecting dinner and champagne and gratitude that I had a husband generous enough to take care of his mother. Instead, I welcomed them exactly the way they deserved, by serving them the reality they'd been avoiding and the consequences they'd never considered. It started 6 months ago when Anton's mother, Ludmila, began her campaign for a new car. Her old car, a perfectly functional sedan she'd driven for 8 years, had developed some minor issues that would have cost maybe 50,000 rubles to repair. But Ludmila didn't want repairs. She wanted an upgrade. She wanted a luxury SUV like her friend Tatiana drove, something expensive and status-oriented that announced to the world that her son was successful and that she, by extension, was a woman whose children took care of her properly. She'd started subtly, mentioning during Sunday dinners how embarrassing it was to drive her old car, how Tatiana had a Mercedes and Svetlana had a Lexus, how at her age she deserved comfort and reliability. Then the hints became less subtle. Articles left on our coffee table about the importance of adult children supporting aging parents. Pointed comments about sons who really loved their mothers versus sons who were selfish. Stories about her friends' sons who'd bought them cars and how proud those mothers were. Anton, who'd been raised to believe his primary purpose in life was making his mother happy, had absorbed every word like a sponge. He'd started researching luxury SUVs, comparing models, visiting dealerships on his lunch breaks. When I'd asked what he was doing, he'd been vague. "Just looking. Mom deserves something nice, and her car is getting old." I'd pointed out that we were still paying off our own car loan, that we were trying to save for a down payment on an actual apartment instead of renting, that his mother's car just needed repairs, not replacement. "You don't understand," Anton had said, his tone mixing defensiveness with that particular guilt his mother excelled at instilling. "She raised me alone after my father left. She sacrificed everything for me. Now that I'm earning decent money, I should be able to help her. Isn't that what family does?" I'd agreed that helping was good, but buying a luxury car we couldn't afford wasn't helping. It was financial self-destruction. "We can afford it," he'd insisted. "I've been looking at the numbers." But he hadn't shown me those numbers, and I'd been too busy with my own work as a project manager at a tech company to push the issue. We kept separate finances. I paid rent on my apartment where we lived, plus my own expenses, and he paid his expenses and contributed to groceries and utilities. It had worked fine because we both earned decent salaries and lived within our means. Or so I'd thought. I hadn't realized he was planning to demolish those means entirely. The warning signs were there if I'd been paying attention. Anton had become secretive about his finances, closing his laptop when I walked into the room, taking phone calls with the bank in another room, becoming defensive when I asked casual questions about our savings goals. His mother had become increasingly cheerful and excited during her visits, dropping hints about big changes coming, about how she'd always known her son would take care of her properly, about how some daughters-in-law understood family obligations and others didn't. That last comment should have been a flashing red light, but I'd dismissed it as Ludmila being Ludmila. She'd never particularly liked me, viewing me as competition for Anton's attention and resources. She'd made it clear from the beginning that she expected to remain the primary woman in her son's life, that his wife should understand she came second to his mother in importance and priority. It was exhausting and occasionally infuriating, but Anton had been so conditioned to prioritize her that fighting about it had seemed futile. Then came last Tuesday, the day that changed everything. I'd been at work when I received a text from Anton. "Mom got her new car today. We're coming to celebrate tonight. Can you make something special for dinner? Big celebration." My stomach had dropped. New car. Not repaired car. New car. I'd called him immediately, and the call went straight to voicemail. I'd texted back, "What new car? We talked about this. We can't afford it." No response. I'd left work early and gone straight home, my mind racing through the financial implications. A luxury SUV would be at least 2 million rubles, probably more. Even with a decent down payment and trade-in, the monthly payments would be enormous. How was he planning to pay for this? Had he dipped into our emergency fund without telling me? Had he taken money from the savings account we'd been building for an apartment down payment? I'd arrived home and immediately checked our joint savings account, the one account we did share where we'd been accumulating money for our future together. It was untouched. Relief had flooded through me briefly, followed immediately by deeper worry. If he hadn't used our savings, where had the down payment come from? And more importantly, how was he planning to cover the monthly payments? I'd tried calling him again. Voicemail. I'd called Ludmila. She'd answered cheerfully. "Marina, Anton told you the good news? I finally have a proper car, something befitting a woman of my age and station. Your husband is such a good son." I'd kept my voice steady. "Ludmila, how much did the car cost?" She'd laughed. "Oh, I don't concern myself with such details. That's between Anton and the bank. All I know is I'm finally driving something I can be proud of. We'll see you for dinner around 7 to celebrate." I'd spent the next 3 hours trying to reach Anton, panic mounting with each unanswered call. I'd finally called his work, and his colleague had told me Anton had taken a half day to go to the dealership. So this was real. This was happening. My husband had bought his mother a luxury car without discussing it with me, without considering the financial impact, without apparently caring that this decision would affect both our lives dramatically. At 6:30, I'd heard the distinctive sound of an expensive engine pulling up outside my building. I'd looked out the window and seen it. A gleaming silver Mercedes GLC SUV, brand new, probably worth at least 2.5 million rubles. Ludmila had been in the driver's seat looking triumphant, and Anton had been in the passenger seat, looking nervous but trying to maintain a celebratory facade. They'd climbed out, and that's when Ludmila had deliberately jangled those keys, making sure I could hear them, making sure I understood this was her victory. She'd been wearing a new outfit, too, I'd noticed. Expensive boutique clothing, probably also courtesy of Anton's apparently unlimited generosity. They'd walked toward my building entrance, Anton carrying champagne and flowers, Ludmila carrying herself like a queen arriving at her palace. I'd met them at my apartment door before they could knock. Ludmila had moved to embrace me, but I'd stepped back. We need to talk before we celebrate anything. Anton had tried his boyish smile, the one that usually diffused tension. "Marina, let's not start with stress. This is a happy occasion. Mom finally has reliable transportation." I'd looked at him steadily. "How much are the monthly payments, Anton?" His smile had faltered. "Let's discuss this later. Mom's excited to show you." I'd cut him off. "How much?" He'd glanced at his mother, who'd maintained her triumphant expression, offering no help. Finally, he'd mumbled, 75,000 rubles per month. The number had hit like a physical blow. 75,000 rubles. Anton's salary was 80,000 rubles per month after taxes. That meant his loan payment alone would consume 94% of his income, leaving him with 5,000 rubles for everything else. 75,000, I'd repeated slowly. "And what's your plan for paying your share of expenses? Your phone bill? Your car insurance? Your food? Your personal needs?" Anton had looked uncomfortable. "Well, I thought we could adjust our arrangement temporarily. You make good money, Marina. Better than me, actually. So maybe during the loan period you could cover more of our shared expenses, and I'll just handle the car payment. It's only 3 years. That's not so long." I'd felt the fury rising, cold and clarifying. "You took out a 3-year loan with monthly payments that eat up your entire paycheck, hoping I'd feed you in my own apartment?" He'd blinked, clearly not expecting this reaction, clearly having convinced himself this was reasonable. "It's not like that. We're married. We support each other. This is temporary, and it's for my mother. Surely you can understand." Ludmila had interrupted, jangling those keys again deliberately. Marina, dear, this is what family does. Anton is fulfilling his duty as a son. As his wife, your duty is to support him in this. That's how marriage works. You make enough money to support both of you comfortably for 3 years. It's really a very small sacrifice when you think about what I sacrificed raising him alone. I'd turned to her, my voice very calm. Ludmilla, did you encourage Anton to take out this loan? She lifted her chin proudly. I encouraged my son to honor his obligations to his mother. I've earned the right to be cared for in my later years. If that means his wife needs to adjust her expectations temporarily, then that's what marriage requires. I'd nodded slowly. I see. And Anton, you agreed to this plan without discussing it with me? You just assumed I'd support you for 3 years while you bankrupt yourself, buying your mother a luxury car she doesn't need? She does need it, Anton had protested weakly. Her old car was becoming unreliable. And Marina, you're being unreasonable. It's just money. We'll manage. You're acting like I committed some terrible crime. I'd smiled then, though there was no warmth in it. You're right. Let's not discuss this in the hallway. Come in. I'll show you exactly how we're going to manage. They'd followed me into my apartment, clearly expecting me to have calmed down, expecting the celebration they'd envisioned. I gestured toward the dining table, where I'd set out 3 place settings. Please, sit. I prepared for your celebration. They'd sat, Ludmilla still clutching those keys, Anton looking relieved that I seemed to be cooperating. I'd gone to the kitchen and returned with 3 plates. On each plate was a single slice of bread and a glass of water. What is this? Ludmilla had asked, her triumphant expression finally cracking. I'd sat down across from them. This is what I can afford to serve you after paying all my expenses, plus supporting Anton for the next 3 years. You see, I did the math while waiting for you to arrive. My salary after taxes is 140,000 rubles per month. My rent is 45,000. Utilities average 8,000. My car payment and insurance are 20,000. My phone, internet, and other basic expenses are about 7,000. That's 80,000 rubles before food, clothing, savings, or any discretionary spending. I'd continued, my voice steady and cold. That leaves 60,000 rubles. If I'm now responsible for feeding Anton, covering his share of groceries and utilities, his transportation costs, since his car will eventually need maintenance he can't afford, his clothing, his personal needs, that's easily another 30,000 per month minimum, which leaves 30,000 for me, for my food, my clothing, my savings, my entire life, for 3 years. Anton had started to interrupt, but I'd held up my hand. But wait, it gets better. What happens when your car breaks down, Anton? Or when you get sick and need medicine? Or when your mother decides she needs something else expensive? Who pays then? Me, of course, because you'll have nothing. You'll be completely financially dependent on me, like a child, while your mother drives around in her Mercedes, showing off to her friends about what a generous son she has. The reality was starting to dawn on Anton's face, the reality he'd somehow failed to consider while signing those loan papers. That's all, calm down. I am calm, I'd said. And I was, coldly, perfectly calm. I'm calm and I'm clear. Anton, here are your options. Option 1, you go back to that dealership tomorrow and return that car. Cancel the loan, deal with whatever penalty there is. Your mother survives with her old car or something more affordable. We recover from this and rebuild our financial plan together. Option 2, you keep the loan and figure out how to survive on 5,000 rubles a month yourself, because I'm not subsidizing this. We'll need to seriously reconsider this marriage if you choose your mother's luxury over our partnership. Ludmilla had gasped dramatically. You're threatening divorce over a car? What kind of wife? I'd interrupted her. What kind of wife refuses to enable her husband's financial self-destruction? A smart one. What kind of mother encourages her son to ruin himself financially for her benefit? An incredibly selfish one. The room had gone silent except for Ludmilla's outraged breathing. Anton had looked between us, seeming to finally understand the magnitude of what he'd done, the choice he was being forced to make. I can't return it, he'd said quietly. I signed a contract. The loan is finalized. Mom already has the registration and... I'd cut him off. Then you've made your choice. You've chosen your mother over your wife, her luxury over our future, her approval over our partnership. I need you to understand something, Anton. I love you, or I loved you, but I will not destroy my financial life supporting a man who won't prioritize our marriage. So here's what happens next. You have until the end of this month to figure out your living situation, because you can't stay here unless you're contributing proportionally to expenses, which you can't do with a 75,000 ruble loan payment. Anton had looked stricken. You're kicking me out? I'd corrected him. I'm establishing boundaries. This is my apartment. I pay the rent. If you want to live here, you contribute fairly. You can't contribute because you've committed your entire income to your mother's car. Therefore, you need to find somewhere else to live that you can afford, which at 5,000 rubles per month will be very difficult. Maybe your mother's couch, since you've sacrificed so much for her. Ludmila had exploded. This is outrageous. Anton is your husband. You made vows. You can't just throw him out because he loves his mother. I'd turned to her. I made vows to a partner, not to a child who needs to be financially supported while he buys his mother luxury items. Those vows included mutual respect and shared decision-making, which Anton violated when he took out this loan without consulting me. So yes, Ludmila, I absolutely can establish boundaries that protect me from the consequences of his terrible decision. You're a terrible wife, Ludmila had shouted. A selfish, heartless... I'd held up my hand. Stop. I'm going to say this once. You need to leave my apartment now. Both of you. Take your bread and water with you if you're hungry. Your celebration is over. Anton had started to protest. Marina, please, can we just talk about... I'd shaken my head. Not tonight. Tonight, you need to leave. We can talk later, but right now, I need you both to go. They'd left, Ludmila still sputtering indignantly, Anton looking dazed and frightened, finally understanding, perhaps, that his grand gesture had consequences he hadn't anticipated. I'd watched from my window as they'd gotten into that ridiculous Mercedes, as Ludmila had driven away with her son, who'd given up everything for her approval. And I'd felt not satisfaction, but sadness. Sadness that Anton had been so damaged by his upbringing that he couldn't see how unhealthy this was. Sadness that my marriage was probably over. But also clarity. Perfect, crystalline clarity that I'd made the right choice. Over the next 2 weeks, Anton had tried various approaches to fix things. He'd apologized profusely, admitted he'd made a mistake, begged for another chance. But when I'd asked if he was willing to return the car, he'd always hedged. Mom would be so humiliated. Can't we just make it work somehow? The answer was always no. He'd asked if he could move back in and just pay whatever he could afford toward expenses. I'd refused. I'm not running a charity, Anton. Either contribute proportionally or find other arrangements. He'd tried guilt. I'm your husband. You're supposed to support me through hard times. I'd countered that hard times meant unemployment or illness, not voluntary financial self-destruction for someone else's luxury. He'd tried anger. You're destroying our marriage over money. That's shallow. I'd pointed out that he'd destroyed our marriage by prioritizing his mother's wants over our partnership, and that wasn't shallow. That was deal-breaking. His mother had launched her own campaign, calling me, showing up at my workplace, telling anyone who'd listen that I was a terrible wife who'd abandoned her husband in his time of need. I'd blocked her number, reported her workplace visits to security, and ignored the gossip. The people who mattered knew the truth. My friends, my family, even some of Anton's friends had reached out privately to say they understood my position, that they'd have done the same, that Anton had lost his mind. The final confrontation came 3 weeks after the car purchase. Anton had showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking exhausted. I need to come home, he'd said. I've been staying with Mom, and it's terrible. She's criticizing everything I do, comparing me to her friends' sons constantly, making me drive her around everywhere because now she's used to having a luxury car, but doesn't want to put miles on it herself. She's turned into a nightmare, Marina. Please, let me come home. I'll figure out the money somehow. I'd looked at him with pity. Anton, do you hear yourself? Your mother convinced you to bankrupt yourself for a car she's now too precious to drive, and you're still defending this decision? He'd started crying then, actually crying. I don't know what to do. I can't afford to live anywhere on 5,000 rubles a month. I can't eat, can't do anything. I'm trapped. And Mom keeps saying you should be supporting me, that you're violating your marriage vows, that I should divorce you and find someone who understands family obligations. Then maybe you should, I'd said quietly. Maybe you should divorce me and find someone who's willing to sacrifice their financial security for your mother's luxury. Because, Anton, I love you, but I can't save you from consequences you chose. You made a decision that destroyed your financial life and disrespected our partnership. Those are consequences you need to live with. I'm not rescuing you from them." "So we're done?" he'd asked, his voice broken. I'd paused, considering. "I don't know. That depends on whether you're willing to do the hard thing, the thing that actually fixes this. Go back to the dealership, explain the situation, negotiate a return or a trade for something affordable. Yes, your mother will be upset. Yes, she'll make your life miserable for a while. But Anton, she's making your life miserable anyway, and at least this way you'd have a future. You'd have dignity. You'd have a chance to save our marriage." He'd looked at me with desperate hope. "If I do that, we can fix this? We can be okay?" I'd chosen my words carefully. "If you do that, it shows me you're capable of prioritizing our marriage over your mother's approval. It shows me you're willing to set healthy boundaries. It shows me you're the partner I thought I married. Will that automatically fix everything? No. We'd need counseling, serious work on your relationship with your mother, time to rebuild trust. But it would be a start, a real start." Anton had left without promising anything, and I hadn't heard from him for 4 days. I'd started to accept that he'd chosen his mother and the misery that came with that choice, that our marriage was over, that I needed to move forward alone. And then yesterday, Anton had called. "I did it," he'd said simply. "I returned the car. Well, technically I traded it for something Mom can actually afford. A decent used car worth about $800,000. My loan payment is now $25,000 per month, which I can actually manage. Mom is furious. She's not speaking to me, but I did it." I'd felt relief and pride wash over me. "Anton, that took courage." He'd laughed bitterly. "It took watching my life fall apart and finally understanding that I'd been manipulated into destroying myself. Marina, Mom said terrible things when I told her I was trading the Mercedes. She said I was weak, that I was choosing a wife who didn't respect family over my own mother, that I'd regret this forever. And I realized she was more upset about losing the status symbol than about my well-being. She didn't care that the loan was crushing me. She cared about showing off to her friends. "I'm sorry," I'd said, and I meant it. That's a painful realization. Anton had continued. "I've been in therapy, just 2 sessions so far, but my therapist says I have serious boundary issues from how I was raised, that Mom essentially trained me to measure my worth by my ability to make her happy, regardless of cost to myself. He says it's going to take work to unlearn that. Marina, I know I destroyed your trust. I know I prioritized the wrong things. But if you're willing, I want to work on this. I want to build a marriage where we're partners, where I don't let my mother manipulate me into hurting us. I want to be better." We're taking it slow. Anton is staying with a friend while we work on rebuilding trust through counseling. His mother is still furious, still trying to manipulate him back into her orbit, but he's holding boundaries with support from his therapist. The loan is manageable now, $25,000 per month that he can afford, while still contributing to our household when we're ready to live together again. We have a long road ahead, but for the first time, I believe we're walking it as actual partners. As for Ludmila, she drives her adequate used car and seethes about what I took from her. She tells anyone who'll listen that I destroyed her relationship with her son, that I'm controlling and manipulative, that I forced Anton to humiliate her. But Anton is learning to let her drama be her problem, not his. He's learning that loving your mother doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on her altar. He's learning that healthy love respects boundaries and considers consequences. And I learned something too, that welcoming people the way they deserve sometimes means serving them the reality they've been avoiding. Ludmila and Anton showed up expecting celebration of a terrible decision. I gave them bread and water and truth. Was it dramatic? Yes. Was it unkind? Perhaps. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Sometimes kindness looks like clear boundaries and consequences. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's dysfunction. Did I feed my husband after he took out a loan equal to his salary for his mother's luxury car? No. I fed him reality instead. And that reality, bitter as it was, might have saved him and us from years of misery. That's a meal worth serving, even if nobody thanks you for it at the time.